Everybody, good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the Brand Insider Summit. We're going to get started. I wanted to, as many of you may know already, we do these Insider Summits throughout the year in a lot of other verticals. This is probably our most strategic of the Insider Summits that we do, talking more higher level about branding and strategy. But we also do much more topic-specific drill downs into particular channels and modes of marketing. And we have some coming up. In fact, the 2 sets of summits that we're going to be doing on Captiva Island in late April and early May are directly related to a lot of the successes of the direct-to-consumer brands. A lot of you have proven your expertise in some of these fields. For instance, we're going to be doing a Search and Performance Insider Summit on April 28th through May 1st. Same format, but drilling a little bit more deeply into specific tactics around intent-based marketing, and especially the ways in which search ties into a larger universe of performance marketing that can close the loop with consumers and track them through conversion and sales, something that a lot of you are really well acquainted with. So if any of you are interested in this, by the way, or if you have a specialist on the team that is interested, please contact me because we're still recruiting VIPs and speakers for that one. That's going to be followed by our Data and Programmatic Summit that we've been doing for a number of years, and that's drilling more down into media buying practices across data-driven automated advertising. At that one, we're going to be talking about the ways in which a lot of media buying is moving towards business outcome KPIs, as well as programmatic moving across a lot of new areas, not only just video, but also moving into audio and out of home. So again, if you have specialists on the team who are especially interested in these topics, I'm always looking for adding especially more direct-to-consumer brands to both of these. We are, and also I wanted to mention that the videos from yesterday are already up at the site, so if you want to go back and review anything, or if you missed anything, go back to the site and the videos will be right on the agenda. So we're going to start today. Who has not ever heard of Quip toothbrushes? All right, it is hard to miss. Literally, before I got here this morning, I got a Quip toothbrush ad in my podcast, and I got one in my email, and that's a light day. I want to welcome Elliot Fryer, who manages brand for Quip, to talk about that. You know, in many ways, Quip is sort of the poster child of direct-to-consumer marketing. Any company that can get us to subscribe to our toothbrush is doing something really interesting and novel. Please welcome Elliot Fryer. You have the clicker somewhere in there, don't you?
I do.
Okay, you got it in your pocket. Good. It's right behind you.
Oh, beautiful.
There you go.
No coffee, so.
Elliot they've just launched a product yesterday, which is why we're doing this today, because doing it yesterday would have been cruel.
Yes, it was a bit crazy, yeah.
But we are going to get to talking about that new product. But first, I think all of us know Quip from the sheer volume of advertising, the ubiquity, especially in social channels. So why don't you give us a little, I'd like to drill into, start out with what you've learned from those channels. Let's start with where Quip started in its advertising journey.
Yeah, so I guess when I started around 2 years ago, also good morning everyone. When I started around 2 years ago, we were mainly on social, so following the same trajectory as other D2C brands, where we were really finding our bread and butter on social, very data driven. We can see like how it's performing immediately. It's easy to scale and also pull back, but that also means you're sort of speaking to one audience to some degree. There's a specific demographic that buys more heavily from social than from other channels. So we wanted to expand beyond that, and our mission really is accessibility. And our product can speak to everyone. Everyone has a mouth. Everyone brushes their teeth 2 minutes twice a day. So it makes sense for us to be in a lot of places at once and have that sort of chorus effect.
I want to drill into how you discovered that, because I think that's an important point. And acquisition is one of the things that almost everybody who responded to our first survey said is a challenge for them. First of all, you've described to me when we were talking social as a kind of echo chamber. What was the demographic that you were heavying up on in social that you were finding? But I'm really curious, how did you discover what you didn't know? In the sense that, how did you discover who you weren't talking to and that you weren't talking to them and that you were in a kind of echo chamber?
Yeah, so I think we all kind of know the person who buys on social is typically younger, a younger millennial or even now older Gen Z, who is skews female, but also more sort of qualitatively, it's someone who buys other brands that are direct brands that are just getting their footing. So we saw a lot of social posts from folks, tagging us and a lot of the other brands in this room, which is really great. We like to have those loyal users who, associate our brands with other amazing challenger brands. But also, we realize that there are a lot of people in this country and the world outside of New York City and San Francisco and the major urban areas, and so how can we expand beyond that and reach those folks as well?
You were finding this by getting outside your own data. I think that's what's critical and interesting, is that you weren't just looking at your ad manager to discover this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess like Facebook Ads Manager or any of that data is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It creates, when you're spending money on those channels, you're going to get the user that's buying from those channels. So how do you expand to new demographics? That was a challenge that we had, and we sort of, that's why we tested into, now we're on everything from paid social to TV. So that includes audio, direct mail. We work with MediaPost's in here, who was talking earlier. So yeah, that definitely was a challenge.
What were some of these new levels of new audiences that you were reaching that you hadn't seen before?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, it was really about understanding our user, and so doing a lot of that user research. You can assume like who the buyer is, but there are also small pockets that that you could groom to become a loyal audience and that you could also sell to in the long run. So for example, one demographic was sort of like the techie dad, so like a 40-year-old man who lives in a suburb or an exurb, tends to be relatively high income and likes to buy like tech toys, that are things that people aren't super excited about. Aren't usually super excited about, but he is. So like he'll buy this like cool toothbrush that he's gonna talk about to everyone, and buy it for his whole family. So we really found those sort of new groups, and then started targeting them. So like an example is one of our best performing sort of, I guess, verticals within podcasts or themes is news. And as well as on radio, and those folks tend to listen to those podcasts.
I want to drill into a few of these channels that you're doing, because you're everywhere, and I think you have a lot to tell us about some of these channels that you've been experimenting with, podcasting, for instance. What have you found about what works and what doesn't work, and the measurability of this and the scalability of podcasting, since that's a big question within the podcasting world now?
I mean, I would say we're still trying to figure it out, and I think that's probably funny because we're on a lot of podcasts. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to authenticity and making sure that you're creative-wise, you have like pretty strict brand guidelines, but you're letting sort of the podcast host to riff off of what they think of your product and what they really care about, because it tends to be that their audience will care about the same thing. So it's different than TV. It's not you're cutting to commercial break and then the brand is saying something and it has a total disconnect from the show if you're watching Friends or something. But on a podcast, you hear the commercial music and then it's the same person most of the time, unless it's like Oprah's podcast, you'll hear that host endorsing your product. So it's really important to build those relationships with those hosts and make sure that they feel empowered to talk about your brand in an authentic way.
But you started out as such a performance-driven, data-driven company. When you move into something like podcasting, this is working on a different metric, if arguably there's a metric at all, because those little call-outs to go to specific URLs or addresses they're supposed to register the hit from podcasting. That's not the metric that's really working best here. How are you how are you folding podcasting and coming up with a metric that makes sense to justify the spend?
Yeah, so there are a few different methods for that. One, yes, that link that most people don't go to, but also tactically we have like a post-checkout survey that we incentivize our users to take, and that actually it has been really helpful for us. But also understanding that, especially for us with a product that is like anyone can use, if we can maintain that chorus effect, and also we now have a footprint in national retail, we can see that that long tail of brand awareness, not only in national retail, but also through an increase in traffic, and then that leads to conversions down the line.
So for something like podcasting, you're not relying on the podcasting metric at all, primarily, that you're offered so much as back-end surveys that are actually giving you a sense of what the customer journey was.
Right, exactly, yes.
I'm curious about that customer journey and what you know about, again, the volume sort of speaks for itself and makes one wonder how much you know about the customer journey for this product, how many touches it takes to convert, and what you know about that, and how that figures into all this.
So it really depends on the user. For us, like our consideration phase is pretty short, but it depends. We're doing a lot of work right now into understanding the user based on the source they're coming from, which is really tough because we now are on so many different channels, and within those channels, there are so many different audiences. So like an example is on TV, a user who's watching a news show and sees a 1-minute ad is very different than someone who's watching a crime show and sees a 15-second ad. And they will take a different amount of touches to lead to conversion. And so I think there's still a lot of work for us to do there, but we're going at it from that understanding that every user is different and really personalizing that messaging.
Well, every user, or is the source the proxy for the user? I mean,
yes.
Is every user really different? Are you actually tracking personally, or are you using the source as a kind of a proxy for understanding what kind of profiling, what kind of customer journey they're on?
So it's a combination. So source, but also we also have data on the user. Not only from source, but so we'll understand where they live, their demographics. So it's making sure that we're aggregating that together. So they're not just the source that they're coming from, but they're also what age they are. They're also what gender and all that fun stuff.
So we talk a lot about media fragmentation, and it's like you're taking a deep dive right in the middle of it. You're being everywhere. You're experimenting with all these different channels. You're even doing things like trying to understand specific customer journeys based on each of those. That's a lot to manage internally. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're actually structuring your organization so you can monitor all of these fragments, make sense of them, and do it in some sort of efficient way?
Yeah, so I mean that's something we're working on. I know yesterday we talked about how talent acquisition is a big challenge for all of the brands in the room, but mainly on the marketing team. We are really analyst driven, so we have multiple analysts who more so are focused on digging into that data, and that's their day to day, rather than just optimizing channels. It's more so understanding the user and really centering that.
So you have a layer of analysts who are talking to you as a media team and doing it that way. Before we move out of this whole media matrix that you guys are, that I think is fascinating, the way that you guys are using so many different media. You're also using, and this was a point I wanted to bring up, you're also even penetrating the senior group, or the 55 plus group. I'm 60, so 55 plus, so this isn't a senior group as far as I'm concerned. But you are actually, these hip young products are actually penetrating into that segment. How are you doing that, reaching that segment?
Yeah, so the older audience, they're very loyal, and but they care about different things, and you reach them in different ways. Obviously, social, not so much. They tend to have a lot of questions. So I guess one example, I think Outbrain is in the room. So yes, native like programmatic has been really helpful for reaching that audience, because that gives them basically it's in a space that they trust, and then they also are able to gather more information on the product, and we're also able to tailor landing pages to the value propositions that they care about, which are slightly different than what younger folks care about. They really care about sort of the fine print and making sure that it has X, Y, Z, rather than sort of the emotional appeal.
So you're also describing, before we go into the product development and the product you launched yesterday, this also raises the question of how much creative are you generating? Are you doing it all in-house? How have you created a content team that can handle all of what you've just described is highly personalized, a lot of creative variance. How is that working as a content production?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in-house. I think we work fully in-house, don't really work with any agencies as of yet in terms of creative production, other than one TV ad. But I think it really comes down to strategy and making sure that you can be pretty modular in your creative production. So making sure you can create as little amount of assets as possible, and those can be distributed in as many ways as possible, where they might mean different things to different audiences if they're paired with different copy variants. And so it really comes down to the strategy, and that's how you can make best use of creative resourcing.
We should show some of these things.
Oh yeah.
We've been talking so much we forgot we have some things to show.
Good visuals. So I guess in terms of kids launch, this was done all in-house. So we launched the kids product yesterday, which was really exciting for us because it's reaching. Our product does speak to everyone. This is very different in the sense that it speaks to mostly just parents and children, or people who have children in their lives if they're gifting for nieces and nephews. So yeah, this is an example of that product that we released yesterday.
Let's drill into what went into this launch, because it's a kind of a case of the ways in which you guys work and the ways in which research and talking to people matter. So bring us a little bit inside how you decided on that this was going to be your next big product and how you designed it. And how research.
Yeah, so if you want to look, so this is the comparison between the adult brush and the kids brush, which they don't look that different, and that's actually really intentional. So in our post-checkout survey, we actually also ask what product you'd like to see from us next, and one of those things was kids. A lot of people answered that, and then we had an audience of people who wanted kids products from us, so we were able to survey them. And then from that group, we were also able to drill down sort of a research squad. So there are around 50 children, as well as a group of pediatric dentists and hygienists, and they also had children patients who we were able to use them as user testers. So we went through 3 major testing phases. The first was just understanding how they feel about brushing their teeth, how they feel about their toothbrush now, and how they how they feel about the original Quip. And one thing we noticed from the get-go is that kids actually feel proud to use something that their parents are using, and they'd rather feel more grown up than using something that has a bunch of childish gimmicks, which is kind of interesting because a lot of the other products in the category have a bunch of stickers. They're Disney branded. They have a bunch of colors. So it's it kind of made us rethink and understand, oh, this is more about their psychology, which goes back to the fundamentals of Quip in the first place, is building good habits and how do we do that. And we wanted to sort of suss that out more. So from those learnings, we created a prototype and then gathered insights from that. After that, moved into a third wave with a finalized prototype and design that also included the out-of-box experience. And from that was when we really realized, wow, this is really powerful, the fact that kids can feel proud to use something that their parents use. And this was also backed up by research. Parents who tend to have better oral health habits, their children tend to have better oral health habits too. It's really about setting an example. The kids were really excited to get it in the mail and open up their package, and it sort of has that same experience that we have when we order something online, and we're really excited when it shows up. But in terms of actual small design changes, we just changed the size of the brush head because they have smaller mouths, and we made a more grippy handle because they have less dexterity, or they're developing dexterity, and then changed the flavor of our toothpaste because
that was
they don't
actually
like
something
mint.
You discovered along the way, right? The dexterity issue was actually something you discovered along the way that maybe other toothbrush manufacturers didn't even know.
Yeah, so we originally were thinking about making the handle a lot thicker because a lot of other products had these really big handles because I guess they assume that kids just need something big that's what will make them hold it better. And then we just discovered that, oh no, we don't need to make a bigger handle. We can just add a little bit of grip to it, and kids, that works. So yeah, that was
right.
a nice
And again,
learning.
you didn't want to undermine the key psychological insight. It was that they wanted to mimic their parents in some way. And so I think what really sort of one of the themes that courses through this conversation is the limitations of data and knowing when not to lean on the data. I mean, it's something that informed how you transformed and broadened your advertising as you learned that you weren't going to find out everything you needed from Ads Manager, and you needed to start branching out and start listening to individual users and get a sense of what the limitations were. In this instance, you needed to you needed to move away from whatever instincts you may have had on what a kid's toothbrush should be, and you really had to do some what sounds like an intense set of multi-wave actual, prototyping and testing with kids and talking and psychological insight into the consumers. It sounds like this is a company that we've always thought about as very data-driven, very performance-driven, but you really also are a lesson in the limitations of data.
Yeah, so I mean, we're our founder's a product designer, so we're really focused on making sure we're understanding the user fundamentally, and we're designing not only products but also services, and our content is helpful to them, and it's doing something for them that is that they want, which sounds really simple, but I think a lot of folks don't sort of go back to that founding principle.
But now you've got the challenge of have a kid's product and you have their natural and legal limitations on how much you can market directly to kids, especially in a lot of these social channels. So what's the marketing plan for this?
So we actually are not putting that much marketing spend behind kids right now. It's really viewed as, and the reason, so this image makes, we always are sort of showing our adult product with the kids product is because we're not just selling a product, we're selling the whole family on Quip, and this idea of the whole family on Quip. So at the end of the day, the parent is still making that purchasing decision. So, and we want to make sure that the parent also owns Quip, or uses Quip, because that has long-term effects on their kids' habits as well. So it's really about selling Quip as a whole to the family rather than just kids' Quip. So we're going to be tailoring messaging, like having like supplementary messaging on specific channels that have audiences that tend to be parents. But we're not really putting spend behind like hero messaging in terms of kids quite yet.
Yeah. But this is part of the stage, right? I mean, you're going to do, part of this is learning what resonates and maybe what channels to start using when you do go broadly.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the thing. We know who answered. We know the folks who answered kids in our post-checkout survey, but that might be different than the actual purchasing behavior. So we already actually have a lot of data from yesterday in terms of who's buying. So it'll be interesting to further dig into that and understand, from what marketing sources, what they're buying, what their average order value looks like, even their subscription attach rate, all exciting stuff.
And you got the data, that was before or after you crashed the site?
You
had one of the legendary successes yesterday, is the launch of this crashed your site.
Yes, always fun stuff in the D2C world.
I want to sort of circle around all of this with the broader plan for Quip and how you're moving not only outside of that core devoted audience, but now also broadening the brand and the brand concept around it, and you're getting beyond the toothbrush. You've made some acquisitions lately that point towards a different destiny for Quip. Could you tell us about what those were and the branding idea that's driving this?
Yeah, so Quip's founding idea wasn't just about making a product. It was about building good habits that last a lifetime, and that isn't just about the products that you use every day. It's also about the dental professional services that you get, and that builds, the products that you use every day need to be connected to the dental care that you get every 6 months, because if not, then there's that disconnect. The preventative products that you're using aren't matching with your preventative care, therefore you might have to get reparative or restorative work. So it's really about that mission of improving the entire oral care routine and oral health for everyone. So we recently acquired an alternative to dental insurance called Afora. It's a dental care membership plan. And we really just want to make oral care, not just products, but also services, more simple, affordable, and enjoyable. And yeah, that's what we're working on towards in the future in 2019.
So ultimately, it's the brand sort of owning or broadening to a whole category of someone's life, their dental health, and being identified with that. So how do you avoid simply, oh, quick bought an insurance company. Oh, okay, that makes sense, that's interesting. And actually having the authenticity and the authority to do that with your customers, where they're going to trust you to move into this, what really seems like to you a related product, but to others saying, well, I bought a toothbrush from these guys, now I'm going to buy a dental plan from them.
No, yeah, I agree. It's a major jump. But that's also, we're willing to take that risk because we realize the health implications it has just in terms of our mission. It's really important for people to visit the dentist, and a lot of people just don't have access to that. But also, I think there's something to be said for the trust that D2C brands and a lot of brands in this room can build with our users and have this like ultimate digital connection that other incumbent or legacy brands might not be able to do right now. We have a direct line to all of our users. We have started some sort of like brand initiatives that help increase their trust and their association with us as care, like our content and newsletters and advice. We have multiple dental professionals on our team who help provide advice that we can make it a little bit more palatable and fun and not super clinical for our audience. So we're trying to move in that direction already and sort of build this oral health authority. So our users are primed for that. And also, it goes back to sort of what we were talking about in terms of kids and understanding our user. Yeah, they do have reservations in terms of buying services from a company that sold them a toothbrush, but they also are really excited to learn what we're doing there. And a lot of people had reservations about buying a product online 5 to 10 years ago, and so it's just about changing their perspective.
And you guys were, at least, you were smart enough, and maybe this was the vision all along to move beyond the toothbrushes. You have that kind of service element baked into the core product, because when you subscribe to the product, you're not only getting new toothbrush heads, but you're getting reminders of dental checkups and things like that, plus more information about dental health. So you're sort of building the authority that way to move into this other area.
Yeah. So again, like it came back to our founding idea of improving oral health, and we have this, subscription. We have this touch point with folks every 3 months, and then we also email them pretty consistently, and we want to make sure that we're reminding them to visit the dentist. That's very important. Another part of it is we have a large network of dental professionals. So we have over 20,000 dental professionals in our network. So that's dentists, hygienists, dental students, dental assistants, even dental office staff. And how can we connect that dental network with our users in a way that's helpful for our users? How can they find dentists that Quip trusts, or dentists that might reward them with a brush head if they visit the dentist on time? So that's what we've been doing right now, and it's just about expanding upon that.
We have some time for questions. Yep, back here.
All the way back there. Hold on one second. Go.
How you doing? Nolan Simons with Adobe Ad Cloud TV. So I have a specific question around television, obviously. So you mentioned podcasts. You typically are tracking via survey, but how are you measuring success with television, tying not only to digital actions, but also across those different audiences, like older and younger?
Well, the folks from Tatari in the room, where are you? Are they here this morning? Yes. They're our partners. TV is a whole a new ballgame for us, and I still think we're trying to figure out how to do that. But it's about partner selection, making sure your partners you level set what data that you expect from the performance of TV campaigns. But also viewing it from a brand awareness perspective is really important for us. Again, we have like a national footprint in retail, so brand awareness is really important. So it's half we're still a direct response-minded company, but also half with the understanding that a lot of our sales come from national retail, and we can measure that through like the post-checkout survey and other sort of like survey-based data. If that makes sense.
We have another one back here.
Hey, Elliot. Taylor Core with Quantcast. My question's very similar. You had mentioned the chorus effect, which I think is a great term for kind of what you're doing with all your channels. A lot of brands we talk to struggle because social, you have such a great performance feedback with what you're doing with your channels. Then you go beyond that, and you've got so many different things going on. You mentioned the post the survey that they do after checkout, but was curious how you measure kind of the effectiveness of your chorus effect and know that you're hitting these audiences with the the right frequency and the right channels, and then the difficulties of comparing, say, a podcast to search to display to video. Just curious how you look at all that as one holistic picture.
Yeah, sure. Are you curious as to what we're comparing? So how we view the chorus effect like as effective overall, or how we isolate certain channels and then isolate what KPIs we expect from those channels?
I guess a little bit of both, yeah, because I think that's a challenge when people go from social to display or social to video. How should they consider those channels individually, and then I guess overall, kind of how you think about that as one big mix.
Yeah, I mean, so going back to basically, like, it's that idea that direct response is brand awareness. So fundamentally, starting with that at the outset, and I guess it's about measuring. We sort of look at how those survey responses change over time and how our spend changes over time, and see if we can come up with some causation or correlation. Trying to think of an example, but I guess yesterday we were, or 2 days ago, we were featured on Hoda's favorite things on the Today Show. So naturally our post-checkout survey actually went up for TV. It wasn't necessarily a TV ad. We weren't spending on TV because that was earned media, but we saw that more folks were answering TV, and then we also looked into who those folks were and who that user was, and it kind of aligned with the demographic of the viewers of that show. And then we're going to look into potentially how we can put paid spend behind those users based on how their purchasing behavior pans out, if that makes sense.
Elliot, well, I think what's really interesting about this is this approach to branding, this idea that in order to avoid brand blindness and brand apathy, that we sort of open the show with the statistics about how few people really care about their brands, is brands need to start thinking outside of specific products and specific product pitches and look at the ways in which they actually weave into people's everyday lives. They become rituals that are of meaning and of importance in people's everyday lives. And this is something I think a lot of the direct-to-consumer brands actually have an upper hand with. And this is I think yours is an interesting exercise in how a simple, and that many would say was an unlikely product, actually expands into something much bigger and weaves its way into people's rituals. And that's how branding of the next generation is going to matter, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important going back to being an authority on a topic and thought leadership, I think it's really important in the world of Amazon, in the world where people might be buying things from one place. It's really important to have that thought leadership, because then someone can go to you as the authority on that topic, especially if it's in regards to health. If you build brand equity behind that, they're going to come to you first. And when someone's just buying something from a marketplace, there's that disconnect versus you having that authority and your customer trusting you to help improve their lives in a way that really helps them.
Elliot Fryer, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much. Let me actually leave the remote, leave the mic, and leave the remote.
All right, beautiful.
Take the cannoli. Those last two questions about TV are a perfect segue into our next panel. Let me ask Herb, Adam, and Uli to come up and join me. We're going to talk about one of the main through lines and themes in direct-to-consumer marketing right now is the migration to television. Certainly, the TV providers and publishers are salivating over the money that they may be making from this next generation of brands who are starting to buy into television. D2Cs are being seen as one of the main areas of growth for television. But as we've already discussed, and I think some of the questions and some of Elliot's points already raised, TV is a whole different animal from the performance marketing that a lot of your brands were built on. So we have a great group of people here who actually represent three very different approaches to video and to TV. And we're going to start by giving a little sample of each. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves by way of who they are, but also queuing up some visuals for each of their products and the ways in which they're using video. So go ahead, Adam, start us off. This is Adam from Freshly.
Hey, how's it going? This works? Yeah.
Yep.
So those of you I haven't met, I'm Adam Gassman. I oversee growth marketing at Freshly. And for those who haven't had Freshly and haven't been bombarded with a digital ad from Freshly, Freshly is a chef-cooked, ready-to-eat meal delivery service, weekly subscription. We do all the work for you, so no matter what's going on in your life, you could come home and be 3 minutes away from a healthy, tasty, and fresh meal. It's hard to compete with that. Moving on. So for us, it was not always easy to kind of find the sauce of what was going to get people to buy. And I started at Freshly December 2015. We were testing a variety of different offers. We even tested giving Freshly away for free, and that CPA was actually higher than when we offered a discount. So that's how bad it was at a point. So as we were testing, we started to really pivot to video. I came from a background previously to Freshly of kind of viral mashups that were really taking over Facebook and driving organic growth. So it's how could we take those learnings and bring it over to Freshly? And so for us, we really focused on video, and the first thing was to develop a new way to do unboxing videos. You go through YouTube, unboxing videos traditionally were like 5 minutes long and really boring and showed you the YouTuber's house and everything in it, and the truth is, like, you don't really care. You want to know what's in the product, you want to know whether it's good, you want to know what it looks like, and that it's not all done up. And so we were going to created this formulaic unboxing video that was very UGC-like, and it worked. Not out of the gate, but as we looked at our videos as a formula that we could iterate in scenes rather than in concepts, we were able to scale significantly and lower costs, but also produce videos at an efficient cost. As a small, somewhat bootstrap startup, we needed to be able to leverage video without having a massive budget. Another key thing that we used to drive video was to look at our customers for advice and look at their pain points. What was really bothering them, but what was also driving them to go to Freshly as a solution. And we thought about video as a formula, and it was constantly developed and iterating. One of the things we realized about a year in was all of a sudden they all stopped working. Look deep into the insights, everyone was dropping off at 5 seconds, but the 5-second part of the formula was pretty similar for all of our videos. So we switched the beginning to highlight the meal in the beginning of the first few seconds, and that was a game changer to get everything working again. A key aspect of our acquisition and video strategy stems from my previous experience attending law school and how we had to write essays. And if any of you were unfortunate enough to attend law school as well, you also had to write essays this way. And so it's kind of like this IRAC issue rule, apply a rule to your set of facts. And so for acquisition, it was identify a relatable customer pain point that everyone can relate to. For us, it's, coming home too tired to cook dinner. Sometimes it's struggling to eat healthy in the everyday life and everything that's going on in your life. And so that is the start of our formula. And the next part is highlighting your brand as the solution or as the option that is making that problem less burdensome. And making it less of a problem and something that you're not as worried about. And then it's also using human psychology and the fear of missing out, and that with limitation, that you need to take action on this now or miss out. And so what got us really excited about TV, and unlike everyone else on this panel, we haven't done a lot of TV for a couple of reasons. One is we're a capacity-constrained business, unlike other people in the room, in that we can do as well at marketing as possible, but sometimes actually have to pull back because we can't produce unlimited meals. We can't produce unlimited product. We wish we could. And so what we did is we got excited about TV. A couple of things that we did on digital really informed how we thought about TV. One is our customer pain points and what was bothering them. And we thought about this as when we thought about TV creative, in that what is the emotional trigger that is driving people to buy Freshly and will hook them into that commercial spot? Because the likelihood is everyone who's watching our commercials is doing so with their mobile phone or their computer right next to them and isn't really paying all that much attention. We also thought about what performed the best from direct response video. The key other area, as we thought about day parting and days of the week we would advertise on, we looked at our best performing days on conversion by channel and also the best times. We also looked at our interest and affinity audiences to think about what channels we should be advertising on. And then we're good.
Now, Uli's working in a radically different channel, and this is going to be really interesting.
Hi, my name is Uli Haslach, and I'm the founder and president of Pour More Skincare. We are a very disruptive brand. We do skincare differently. We actually changed the application of skincare. Instead of applying it per skin type, which is the conventional wisdom about skincare, we are applying it per climate you are in. So the idea is when you are in Palm Springs, in California, you need a very different skincare than when you're in Miami, where it's hot and humid, or you are in New York, where it's really cold. And so it's a different thing. So we went on the shopping network. I traditionally come out of direct response, did everything from short form to long form, and I used the shopping network all the time. In the skincare industry, the last couple of years, it has become more complicated with claims, with the FTC coming more after the brands. So I, on purpose, created a brand that is very storytelling, so we can stay a little bit away from the claims. Tatcha did kind of the same with the Secret of the Geisha, where it became a very storytelling brand that goes into other aspects of health and and how skin works and all the different ways where you don't have the claim of one magical ingredient that does nothing of what we try to tell the customer it does. So, I found home shopping in the last 25 years that I have been involved an extremely valuable place to test because you don't have to pay for the airtime. So you get a real idea about, strong call to action that you then can take and use into your retail strategy, or even I found it now for your online branding strategy. So that's me. That went on October 30th was our second time. We launched the brand late 2017. What I traditionally do is I test, and not in the United States because QVC and HSN is way too valuable of an airtime. You have to sell right away out of the get-go quite a bit. So 10 years ago, you could really build a brand on QVC. Today, you really can't. So what you do, very successful shopping network brands such as IT Cosmetics, I don't know if anybody's familiar, but they were that overnight success. They really were not an overnight success. They were 3 years before in Canada, doing home shopping in Canada, and really learned their pitch. So once they moved into the US market, they went on home shopping, they went on retail, they did online, they did direct TV infomercial spots with Guthy-Renker, and within 5 years, they were sold for $1.2 billion, which I think was never done before. But they got all their learning out of Canada. So I have traditionally gone to Canada or to the UK for home shopping to test before to go to the US or do anything else to understand the female consumer a little bit better. So we made a lot of changes from the August 21st when we went on the first time. We did okay to not so okay. We made a lot of adjustment in October 30th. We sold out within minutes. We blew out of the inventory. So it's a very interesting approach. So Steve was saying to kind of, share what they are looking for. So TSC looks for a new brand that goes on a themed show, like this is a show about beauty, Hello Gorgeous, you don't have your own branded show yet, so you get 30 minutes part of a 2-hour show, and they're looking for $500 a minute that you kind of reach that goal. When we blew it out, we were at $1,055 a minute, so we were out of inventory half of the time, which is very, very unusual, and we tried to do it very differently. So February 25th, I'm just, we're in Toronto, and we did something we should not have done, but it just was too good of a chance to say no, but we should have said no. The shopping channel was so excited about it that they immediately gave us a rollout for 4 hours, getting our own branded show. And we did again, okay, so we go on again, but I'm literally gonna go back into Hello Gorgeous to test a little bit more. We were not ready for 4 hours yet to do it. Also, what I learned was so interesting, and that I move on, is I never wanted to be the talent because I'm a behind-the-scene person my whole life. And we always, have hired celebrities to either bring an audience or having, lately you hire experts like makeup artists or dermatologists. And so in our case, we hired the beauty director from the Dr. Oz show. There was a beauty editor as well with Women's Health for many years, very professional, knows a lot about beauty. We got her on, and it didn't really do very well. And because today you get from Facebook on Shopping Network, you have hundreds of people respond right away on Facebook what they like and what they not like on the home shopping. It was very interesting that a lot of people felt they want to have the founder. So today, authenticity is so important that I'm going to show a little clip, and you can see how terrible I am, and still it sells. I mean, it is unbelievable. No, I really had to bring this.
Only here do we have brands sharing their worst moments on stage.
Do I have to click?
Yeah,
Yes,
I think
the
click
green
and
button.
it'll start.
Yeah, so this is the online presence on the shopping network. It really does help you to, our traffic has tripled on our website, but that is actually a TSC website. They do a very good job of helping you to educate the customer, and you're very, and that's the same thing with QVC or HSN. So what also happened is then when we went the first time on air in August, which is the same in the United States as well, once you're on a shopping network, you get the attention of the traditional press. It's a large skincare or beauty retailer. So we got Hello Canada, which is kind of the People magazine of Canada, and they put Pour Moi right in Meghan Markle's face. That drove a lot of US sales as well. She's so popular. Then fashion is, the #1 magazine read in Canada. We were in, we got on the Fuse list, and many other things that are coming your way with testing on a traditional home shopping network that do help create credibility for the brand. And
let's show the embarrassing clip.
Yeah, and now comes the embarrassing clip.
Oh,
No,
we don't
we
have
sent
the
the
embarrassing clip? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to... Which is also embarrassing. Okay, right. Now, we're the embarrassed ones now. It's back on us. We will try to get it. Okay. We will try to get it so we can show it sometime during the next few years. Let's move on to Herb. I've got a zillion questions about home shopping, but Herb, you've got truly a unique product.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I was actually just informed something. You have those clips. Oh, you have our clips? Are they also embarrassing? No, not at all. So, because they don't feature me. So, no. Just a quick show of hands. Who's familiar with Fracture? I mean, you guys familiar with the brand? Well, good. TV works to some extent. So Fracture is a pretty interesting brand, and I got to say, I've worked for a lot of different companies. Are we playing the clips now? Yeah, sorry, go ahead. So.
days. But what about the slow days? The sun rays, the PJs. It's easy to let the details slip away. So use Fracture to keep your memories around. Simply upload a photo you love and get a beautiful glass print delivered straight to your door with everything you need. Sometimes there's no occasion at all. Just a moment we don't want to forget. Fracture. Focus on moments that matter.
And do you have the second one? All right, great. Yep, not a challenge. No, it's okay. So, Fracture is a photo decor brand. I had the pleasure of joining the team in 2013. I am the longest standing employee there now, outside of the founders. And it was a fabulous concept. I came into a company, and anytime coming in as chief marketing officer, you want to make sure a few pillars are there for a company. And Fracture, at its core, had so many things right. They had a great, unique value proposition. Nobody's printing on glass. I don't think anybody's really thought to go down that road. Our founders took a chance, and what they really needed to do is get proof of concept. And I joined in October 2013, and something pretty magical happened that same year. We were featured on a show on the DIY network called I Want That. And a lady decorated her apartment, a little brownstone in New York, with fractures. And wow, the web traffic and the response was incredible. So immediately joining the team, what I was asked to do was go out and try to find a way to replicate and grow that channel. Coming from almost 20 years of digital experience, digital marketing experience, I was a little out of my wheelhouse there, going after TV. But we engaged with Sandwich Video out of LA to put together some really emotive branding spots. What you saw there was our second one that we just produced last year. We have another spot that we produced with them, and very non-hyperbolic, basically great branding ads for Fracture. What they did was create a very compelling ad, and what it did, the creative really assumed the intelligence of the buyer, very non-hyperbolic, and we ran that thing as much as we could on DIY. Fast forward several years, attribution really took off from a TV perspective. You had Convertra, you had odometry come into the space, and we got very good at being able to understand TV and really understand how to optimize day parts, different aspects of that. And essentially what happened is that we realized to a certain point that this was a real growth channel for us that we were able to supplement with all of our digital channels. And our media spend has grown significantly since then, and we're pretty excited about seeing what we can do in the space.
So I'm curious, so did you find a way using back-end attribution metrics to solve the problem that Adam had with the supply chain and keeping up with supply? Because this is not an easily mass-produced product.
No, and so similar to what Adam was talking about, Fracture is an on-demand manufacturing product, which, as you can imagine, with seasonality, we get into times and spaces when literally, we can't make the product fast enough. We try to ship everything out within 48 hours of when it's ordered, but we really have to manage the spend on the front end and manage the traffic on the front end to make sure that we don't outpace production. And for a small company, that's been a really fun challenge, but we've really been able to do that through using a lot of good attribution tools and seeing what's working, and then sort of tailoring our spend based on seasonality.
Is this mainly linear that you're buying, or are you also doing OTT?
Great question. So yeah, Because of we take a very evidence-based marketing approach. We have to measure everything. In OTT, as most of you probably know, that's very hard to do. So we stuck very specifically with linear.
How are you going to, Adam? How are you going to come back at TV now? With what you've learned, and how are you going to take the digital video learnings and apply it to your TV buys?
Yeah, so I think same as Herb. We'll start with linear, and I think we will want to have some OTT within that mix. But until we're spending significantly more money, it won't make as much sense for us where we're at to devote resources to OTT. I think we share the concern also in how attributable Hulu and other OTT devices are. And the early signs from TV were...
But they're not more targetable?
They are, but it's also from our concern would be it's not as attributable for us to understand exactly where our dollars are being spent and how they're converting in the same way. And I think, as we look at TV, I think we look at TV as the biggest channel for us by the end of 2019.
So, Uli, I really want to drill into this channel because we rarely talk about shopping channel. Explain to us how the economic. First of all, do you have? Let me ask the same question of you. Do you have supply issues when you're on the shopping network?
Well, we sold out, so we didn't have enough inventory. But normally...
but that was a genuine sellout. That wasn't a made-up sellout.
Yes.
You actually did sell out, and then you've got a supply chain problem.
Well, one of the advantages of home shopping is that you don't really have inventory problems because it's all very planned with airtime.
Right.
The home shopping network knows their consumer, knows their business very, very well. So it is all planned out, so you can much more organize your inventory accordingly. It's very different than retailer. Because in retail, your product might move or might not move, seasonality and all of it. In the shopping channel, you really don't have that. They know exactly at what time they sell how much per dollar. And sometimes you do too much, but that's
well, how much do they share
case.
for you? I'm curious because you mentioned that you had a lot of learnings about selling points and what was working and not working. How granular are the metrics that you get back from them? Are you really, within that, say, half-hour span, are you really seeing ebbs and flows of sales that correspond with what your narrative is at a given point so that you're actually seeing in sort of the same way you can see with digital video where people are dropping off in a video and where you're getting interest? What do you get from this channel in terms of back-end metrics?
And when they don't ring, you see in the green room, you see exactly. I'm on TV, so I'm not seeing it, but everybody else sees it. As well, on home shopping, you have a little thing in your ear, so the production team is constantly telling you what you just said, repeat it again. So they give you, they direct you throughout your appearance of what key points have the call of action was stronger than on other key points. So you keep on repeating what sells the best.
And
it's a very, very responsive medium.
And they share that data with you?
Yes.
And who, in terms of sharing customer data, that customer then becomes your customer?
Well, no, it's the home shopping's customer. But in today's world, all these customers go on your website because it's much more research.
Are they becoming the retail channel then? And are they sort of the go-between, or do they hand any of these customers over to you?
No. These are their customers. But because they go on our website, we then target and retarget them. So once they go on our website, we kind of, are now they are accessible for us.
How is this different from direct response TV? Because you've been in both media.
Well, it's a retailer, so that's different. The shopping network buys the inventory, and so it's less risky for the vendor than if you have to buy the airtime and you have to gear up for some kind of inventory. You actually literally sell that inventory, but it's kind of your responsibility to sell it to the consumer. So you have to bring the talent, you have to do the sales pitch. It's kind of becoming your direct selling to the customer, but you are surrounded by a retail environment. They buy your product. if you don't sell it, then they're going to ship it back to you. But it's like every retailer.
Herb, tell us a little more about why you're not using OTT and why you're relying so much on linear. I know you're seeing some metrics on the back end. There's also a tremendous amount of targetability that's available in OTT. You're able to get into places and nooks and crannies with audiences that you wouldn't otherwise serve. It would seem a natural, especially for a product like yours.
Yeah, so to be clear, it's not that we don't want to use OTT. But honestly, we just haven't been able to crack that nut in a way that's extremely measurable. We've also found that when we ran tests with OTT, it creates a certain amount of noise, and it almost challenges the accuracy of our attribution in linear. So we have to find a way to do it, while we. Maybe we do it on a weekly basis, and we run linear 1 week, we run OTT 1 week, but we're trying to figure out how to crack it. But what happens when you run with linear TV is that you have very measurable traffic spikes. So our attribution platform that we use, TV Squared, they create a dynamic window of time. It might be 8 minutes, it might be 12 minutes, and they look at that spike of traffic, and then they're able to attribute it back to TV with a certain degree of confidence that was the source. Now, there's a lot of traffic that comes in after that we don't even consider. So we know we're only measuring a certain percentage of our TV traffic. But based on that, we're able to gather a lot of data. We can and not only measure visits, that's a primary measurement for us, obviously, and we look at cost per visit as a primary metric for our performance team in that channel. But we look at which channels drive the most uploads, which channels drive the highest quality for actual transactions. So it's a pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting way to measure this offline channel.
You also have a very limited range of creative, and that's a choice, right?
Yeah. So it's a choice, but it's also a function of being bootstrapped and and trying to make the most what you have. There was a really great book written on TV advertising called Reality in Advertising by a guy named Rosser Reeves, and somebody turned me on to it, and I read this book, and it was incredible. It sent an incredibly powerful message. And the really interesting thing is the book was written in 1961 or published in 1961. So, true to this day, like all of our data, all of our results really mirror what he talks about in this book. And he drives home this message of building powerful memory structures around like this core creative. And our creative is not direct response creative. It's very brand driven. So our very first creative we did back in 2013 was sandwich video. It was something we ran, and the results were just there. And focusing on a lot of different channels and a lot of different creative with a fairly small marketing team at the time, we just decided to let it keep running. That creative you just saw, we put out last year, and we've now tested this creative, just simple A/B split test on linear TV, on YouTube, and on Facebook. And honestly, it just gets crushed by our original creative time and time again.
Do you have a sense of the customer journey?
Good question.
Since you're hitting them so often, and with the same creative, do you have a sense of how many touches this really takes, and what the nature of what the conversion cycle is really like?
It's very short. It's very short. From what we can gather, we do. I mean, obviously, you're looking at a huge swath of data, and customer journeys are all over the place and incredibly complex. But what we can gather is most people finish their orders within a week. So the customer journey is fairly short, at least on the front end. It involves social, and we leverage TV to do a lot of retargeting. We leverage TV. We use modal pop-ups when people hit our mobile site, timed pop-ups, of course. We do exit intent pop-ups, and literally with our TV audiences, we have like a 17 to 20% conversion on a modal pop-up to get an email address. I've never seen anything like it in my career as a marketer, having those kind of numbers on just interruption modal pop-ups. Work very well. And the retargeting ads that we fire out, across all of our social channels, they perform very well as well.
Adam, you have a different approach. Tell us about your creative approach.
So I would say we try to test as many creatives as possible. We also work and partner with Tube Science, which is a creative video agency specializing in Facebook and Instagram. I would say that we probably test on average, just looking at paid social, close to 100 different video iterations a week. And when I say video iterations, I'm not saying 100 very different videos, but in thinking about it at the ad set level, an ad set will have 5 or 6 different ads, and the truth is there's not all that much of a difference in between, ad A, B, C, D, and E. It's slight tweaks in the copy, it's slight tweaks in how it starts, how it progresses, how it ends, where the CTA is. To get learnings, it's also testing messaging. What's going to resonate the most and with who? And so that provides us the learnings of what are the messaging tempos for us, kind of also as a brand, that can inform us to understand what is succeeding and what is not, and what are our hypothesis on why people buy and rely on Freshly versus why they don't. I think we initially said some things of what we thought the brand was, but in our heads, we thought that sounded right, but the numbers and the metrics and the insights all said that wasn't why. And so I think traditionally it's how can we test as much as possible and get as much learnings. I think sometimes it does make the brand team uncomfortable that we never send a video ad back to get it redone. We just put it out there. And our reasoning is that, look, it's going to be out there for a short period of time, and we're going to get learnings. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll just kill the ad and move to the next one.
Are you, now how much of this would you consider branding, and how much of this is you're really optimizing against the bottom of the funnel, and you're optimizing against conversions and sales?
Yeah, so I would say little to nothing that the growth team does would we say is a success based purely on awareness. We're reporting our numbers daily, weekly, and monthly across the board, and if we ever sent an email that said, hey, CPA went up 100%, but awareness also went up like 600%, that anyone would be happy. I think we just get, say, hey, go work on the brand team now.
Well, as you're contemplating a TV strategy, does that change at all?
No, and I think Freshly has no problem in creating demand. So I think, look, we want to have a very diversified channel mix. So we're not as reliant on Facebook as we were 2 years ago. And as Facebook went through these fluctuations of problems, so did our CPAs. And so that's where we pivoted to have more of a reliance on direct mail and affiliate marketing and other, more traditional channels. And I think we still look at TV as a direct response conversion driver. The good part is Freshly isn't a high AOV product where you're sitting there, you're contemplating it. Someone once told me that I think Peloton has 40 interactions on average before you buy a bike, which makes sense. It's over $2,000. Freshly is nothing like that. Most people who interact with Freshly buy so within 1 or 2 interactions and buy so within that first day. Could we do a better job of identifying why those group of people who are buying 28 days out don't buy right away, and how could we address that? I think that's something we're looking at as we move through 2019.
I want, since Uli and Herb, since you're relying so much on TV now, I wanted to talk about how this offline presence is tying to your online. How are these media driving people direct to you? How are you devising and working on your online strategy, online creative, the flow of the customer to match up what you're doing on TV and capture that online?
So for us, we are kind of similar like Adam. We are learning from our online, on TV experience of what is missing on our brand, or what the consumer actually, when they see Pour More, what they want it to be. So it's the complete opposite of what we heard yesterday. from Francis Ford Coppola, who has a very single vision and is implementing it successful. By us, it's 360-degree the opposite. So what we found on TV, and now we are, and then we kind of tested online with our social media and website, was that our consumer, because we are climate-specific skincare and the only one that exists, that our consumer always immediately assumed we had to be very climate conscious. Automatically, even we were not going into this, pour more means for me, we were more educating about how skin behaves in a climate. The consumer kind of overrode it, and it started on Facebook completely about, you know, are they shipping any plastic in their boxes? Is the paper completely recyclable? Are they using mixed paper? So it's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this before. And so I'm happy with it. You know, we had to kind of really start doing things differently because our consumer sees us as a very environmental, cautious brand. Even we didn't come out at this at all. We didn't think about it because it's a controversial subject, so we tried to stay away from it. And it's completely different. So one of the things, skincare is it's a sampling industry. You send samples out. What we realized is we had to stop it immediately, and we wrote out and said we stopped our sampling process because this is what, you know, really kills the ocean, all these little plastic tubes that really nobody needs, because if you buy it online and you don't like it, you send it back and get your money back. So that should be your trial. We shouldn't send millions and, you know, of little, you know, single-use packages out, and our sales went through the roof.
Are you seeing, is the home shopping buyer,
yes,
are they, when they see your brand, are they coming to you, do they really just want to buy from that channel, or are you seeing a reasonable bump at your site from people coming off of that and
investigating? A very big bump, because they are doing the research. As you said, today online is all about research, and people not immediately buy. They go on their Instagram, they go, you know, while they're watching TV, they go on their phone and check out that vendor's website. And they want to see who you are and learn. So what we do then, we retarget them, and we're trying to get it, before we invest in a big branding campaign in the United States, we're trying to get it right to understand our consumer and our brand better. That's pretty much what it is.
Herb, how are you harvesting that attention on TV and bringing it online?
Harvesting the attention?
Well, how are you treating that flow? I mean, what are you doing to connect the TV to your online experience?
So, you know, wanting to take somebody on a real brand journey and really connect with them at a brand level is pretty important to us. So it obviously starts with modal pop-ups that I talk about. We want to make sure their initial experience is a good one. And with 70 to 80% of our traffic now coming to our mobile site, you know, you have to focus on mobile first. So once we get them into the flow, we retarget. But what we've been able to learn is that at that point in time, with the credibility that you generate from being on linear TV channels, what they're really looking for is that third-party feedback. We test tons and tons of Facebook creative, tons of Facebook ads, and the ads that we're seeing really early on in the buying cycle that perform the best at that point are customer testimonials and or UGC type content. So getting them into that flow from introduction to fracture, they've made they're engaged enough to make a visit to the mobile, and then, you know, hitting them up on Instagram with some kind of UGC content or some great testimonial from somebody who looks and feels like them has been a big win for us.
We have time for questions? This group? Right up here. Sorry, we got one back here, and then we'll get to you, I promise.
Excuse me, Tim Moran, Cheetah Digital. Great panel all, thank you for the insight. Uli, I had a question specifically for you. So you mentioned that you had certain revenue expectations when you're on the shopping network, but the question was, did you see a bump in website traffic? And the answer was yes, because people do their research, they want to see what kind of a brand that they're purchasing. Do you then, because of that revenue requirement on the shopping network, incentivize customers to leave your website and then go back to purchase from the shopping network, or are you just as well with them purchasing directly from you?
No, we have a link that goes directly back to the shopping channels. In Canada, we don't do anything else yet other than the shopping channel because it's all about learning for us at this point. But then eventually we're going to do Amazon Canada and we're going to do Shoppers Drug as the retailer.
One back there. And then
No, we have, I
Hey, guys.
promised her. I promised.
You promised her. Really? Wow. Okay, hey, here you go. Oh, where'd you go? Where'd you go? Sorry. Okay, he promised you.
I'm making promises.
Hi, I'm Erica Barnes. I'm with A&E Networks, our data-driven TV targeting. So, Adam, you mentioned that you guys look at TV as a direct conversion, and Herb, you said that your attribution window, you're looking down to 8 to 12 minutes. I'm curious to know what your reasoning is behind viewing TV as a direct conversion, like viewing it that quickly after a view, as opposed to looking at as an incremental reach and awareness.
So I would say twofold. First would say is we don't look at it as TV went on and we expect conversions now. So we do look at it as an incremental benefit to branded search, to Facebook, and to other channels. But when we judge the success or failure of a TV campaign, it is going to be done on the CPA based on our attribution. I think the reason behind that is right now we don't have a demand problem. We don't have a long user journey. We don't need to map out first interaction through eighth interaction and be thinking about it that way. I think if we launch different product lines with higher AOVs, and now one product line has a 7 touch point, then I think we start looking at TV for that product as improving awareness. But in Freshly's current existing model, we have to control demand. And so in controlling demand, adding a top of funnel channel for awareness isn't really necessary at this particular time. And I think that's what drives our thought about it.
Yeah, TV is expensive.
Okay, all right. Well,
and TV is an expensive channel. So
we'll go.
Hey guys,
Go
I'm Nick Hill from Simul Media, and we are a TV advertising solution provider. And my question is about inventory. How do you guys select certain networks or day parts or programs to ensure that you're reaching your target audience on TV?
So good question. So we work with a really great media buying agency, and we don't buy remnant. Like we buy, they're buying big blocks of content from a wide variety of channels. So we've never run into an inventory issue. But that's just us. That's our personal experience. Now, when we do buy, anytime you place bids on TV media, you never get 100% of your bid. It's like most other channels. But what we've seen is we generally settle in around 75 to 85% of our buys, so we can plan around that.
We are going to talk about this at the roundtable. I think it's going to be a rollicking one because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to TV and video. Guys, thanks very much. That was fun. We want to welcome one of our sponsors, Tatari, for a 10-minute presentation on the science of scale, and that's going to be delivered by its CEO and co-founder, Philip Engelbrecht. Phil?
Thank you. You guys can hear me? Good morning, everybody. So yeah, my name is Philippe. My accent is Belgian, in case you wonder. And so I'm with Tatari. Our name's been mentioned a few times. But for those of you who don't know what we do, we focus on the measurement and optimization of television advertising, including the media buying. And we actually do this for quite a few companies, some of them established brands, a company like a Monster.com or a Mrs. Fields Cookies. But of course also many young and very fast-growing brands, and we'll talk about some of those later in the presentation. Companies that do TV advertising, more than 40% work with Tatari today, and so obviously it's something we are very proud of. Now these companies come from a variety of industries. They're operating at different growth stages, But if there's one thing they all have in common is that they're maxed out on digital customer acquisition, because this is what acquiring customers in a digital channel typically looks like. As your spend increases, shown on the x-axis, your cost to acquire one additional customer, i.e. your marginal customer acquisition cost, goes up very quickly, almost exponentially. Many direct-to-consumer brands who heavily rely on Facebook and Instagram feel this pain a lot. Facebook, by the way, for what it's worth, is incredibly shrewd at masking this cost pattern, because they're going to report the numbers at the average, so that green line is going to look a whole lot flatter. Television advertising fundamentally behaves differently. If something works on TV, kind of using the terminology of this chart, let's say a particular network yields a specific marginal customer acquisition cost, then you can reasonably expect it to work at high spend levels, much higher than digital. And so the short of it is television advertising scales. And so many direct-to-consumer brands know this all too well when they seek these new types of scale. And in-house, they will often explore streaming television advertising, all right? Running ads on OTT and connected TV experiences. By the way, that makes a lot of sense, because for all intents and purposes, it's almost the same like digital video advertising. And that's something that direct-to-consumer brands are incredibly familiar with. It's also the moment where disappointment may kick in very quickly. And the reason for that is that as much as streaming television advertising promises, it is nowhere near the digital perfection, especially if you think about measurement and targeting. And this was actually also already mentioned in the prior panel. The biggest issue of all is scale. Because when television streaming or advertising on streaming television does work, it's really hard to throw a lot of money at it. So scale is the biggest issue. And the best way to demonstrate this is actually take you through the journey of one of our recent clients, Daily Harvest. Daily Harvest is a New York-based company. They deliver very thoughtfully sourced, chef-created recipes built on fruits and vegetables, and if you haven't tried it, actually, it's really good. And Daily Harvest got into streaming television advertising very quickly with great success. But they also realized that they kind of maxed out, and so when we started working with them in December, just a few months ago, we immediately looked at the kind of more alternative forms of television advertising, i.e. advertising on cable and broadcast, often defined as linear TV, because we all watch it at the same time. Within a month, we were able to fourfold their spend with the same performance. And so obviously that sounds great. In many ways, it's kind of in line with where the market is. The television advertising market today in the United States, worth $75 billion, the vast majority of it is still linear TV. Streaming, as much as we talk about it in the press or write about it, it's kind of a blip on the radar screen. Don't get me wrong, those two lines will converge. The worlds will tilt, but that's at some point in the future. Where we are today, what direct-to-consumer brands need the most, and why they come to television advertising in the first place, is scale. And that's typically to be found on linear TV. I'm not here to kind of advocate that, forget about streaming television. If anything, a great TV campaign has both linear and streaming. But the point really is that the great TV campaign perfectly blends an optimization for performance as well as an optimization for scale. This sounds abstract. The best way to explain it again is to look at a real client. This time, Movement Watches. They're one of our earliest clients. They make these stylish watches without the luxury markup. Based out of LA, the company was founded as a Kickstarter project about 5 years ago. They got into TV advertising with us, have grown explosively, and actually were acquired by Movado Watches just a few months ago. So at Atari, we like to take all credit for that. But this is what their journey and TV advertising looked like, those first 6 weeks. And this chart kind of plots their performance on TV relative to the target. And they went from 133% down to 51% in just those 6 weeks. And that's obviously great, but you know what's even greater? Is what's behind it. We also eightfolded spend from $25,000 a week to $200,000 a week, and that's how we scale them up. And by the way, that was very conscious, and it's kind of mind-boggling, right? Because we're trying to gel two juxtaposing targets against each other. On the one hand, increase scale, i.e. spend more, and on the other hand, increase performance, spend less. And at Atari, this is what we call the science of scaling television advertising. The best way to kind of like explain how we do this is again taking you through one of our client experiences. I just want to take a quick poll. Who here in the room does TV advertising or has experience with TV advertising? All right. For those who did not raise their hands, bear with me in the next 2 minutes because we're going to get incredibly detailed, if not geeky. So I'm going to apologize up front. So I'm going to take you through the Hubble story. And Dan was on stage yesterday with Hubble Contacts. So Hubble Contacts sells daily contact lenses for about half the price under a subscription service. They are one of the earliest, if not most successful, direct-to-consumer brands out of New York. And so we started working with Hubble in spring. And one of the things we looked at very early was the opportunity to advertise on MLB games, baseball games. Just to give you provide you with a little bit of perspective, if you want to run a 30-second ad during the World Series, that will easily set you back $250,000 or more. That's not something you can call a test anymore, right? So how do we move there? Well, one of the things we did first was actually to air on college baseball games. It's not MLB, right? But it's a look-alike audience of what MLB might be. We also aired on local MLB games, Yankee games in this particular case. So obviously, if you just do local advertising, that will cost you a little bit less than a full-blown national airing. And the results were very encouraging. The yellow bars kind of indicate the outperformance to the target across 9 games. And based on these early diamonds in the rough, we had the courage to kind of dabble our feet into the MLB playoffs. But there again, we didn't go full out just right away. The first thing we did was actually do fractional buys. And the fractional buy really, in this case, Dish, what we do is we buy a national airing, but of course, if you just air on Dish, you only get a portion of the country, i.e. those people who subscribe to Dish. And obviously, you pay less. And that works well, so we got bolder. And then we got, click again, into the true national airings. But rather again than paying full price, we bided our time and we would take advantage of fire sales opportunities just to make sure that it works. And when all of that was done, by the time the World Series final were upon us, that was the Astros versus the Yankees, if you remember. I mean, we knew exactly what to pay, when to pay, how much to bid. We knew everything. And so we aired on 6 of the games, all of them outperforming to target. And so that was a great story. To quickly summarize, and what are some of the things that we did? Fractional tests, local airings, lookalike audiences, and fire sales. But like a true TV commercial, I have to say, but wait, there's more. So let me take you through the NFL, right? The NFL, I mean, that's kind of like the ultimate, right? So again, to provide you with some idea, a 30-second ad in a flagship NFL game will cost at least $300,000. The Super Bowl, the Holy Grail, will cost you $5 million or more. So how do you get there? Well, for our clients, we'll start with as little as $5,000. Overlaid on a fractional test, in this case DirecTV, we'll do national locals, i.e. all the local inventory that went unsold will wrap up and repackages as a pseudo-national buy, and obviously you pay less for that. You don't get the full country again. And so when that works, then we go to a true fractional test, DirecTV in this instance. So now how do we go from 10,000 to 300,000? Well, we can leverage what we call rotational buildups. Instead of airing during the game, we're going to air just before or after the game, and that costs less. It's not 300, it's expensive, 150 to 200,000, but it's not the 300,000. And if that works, then we go full out. And so actually just a month ago for one of our clients, we literally paid 7 digits to air during the Super Bowl. But obviously, we didn't start there. We started on the far left. I warn you, this is going to be detailed. Look, if there's one thing I want you to remember from all of this, oh, sorry, actually, just a quick summary here. But if there's one thing I want to kind of you to take away, especially the direct-to-consumer brands here, is that one, television advertising works really well. You should be brave. You shouldn't be afraid of starting early. But try to think of it more in terms of scale, less performance. And that means do both streaming and linear television advertising. Because streaming is exciting for many reasons. Linear is real. We're going to be around for the rest of the day. If you have questions, obviously we're here. And that was it. 10 minutes up. Thanks.
Philip, thank you very, very much. Very well done. Do you have members from your team here as well, Philip?
Yes. Sorry.
Raise your hand if you're with the Tatar team. Oh, right here. All right, excellent.